have similar mindset and we have similar transitioning journey. So today she's going to be here to share her transitioning stories with you and her business trick and tips with you. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so let's start off to share with the audience like how, when, and how did you realize that you're not living as your true self?
Right.
Yeah.
I have memories back to age 4, and there's actually pictures of me wearing my grandmother's makeup around. And so there's memories throughout childhood, and that was one of the ones that kind of helped me realize something was there. I struggled all through elementary school and junior high specifically. And I grew up in a Christian fundamentalist home. And so there wasn't even an environment to talk about stuff like this. I knew those people were bad or wrong. And so I just buried it. I just pushed it deep, lost myself in school and in sports and then college and then ultimately work. I went into full-time ministry right out of college. I met my wife previously on a missions trip to New York City.
Okay.
And I just hid. I joined the ministry, stayed busy, and just hid.
So did your wife discover your true self?
Yes, I talked to her whatever words I knew at the time. We talked before we were married, and I told her there was something there. And of course, I thought being married would cure me. And so it actually did not. And so she knew we talked about it on and off for a while. Once I stayed busy, especially early in our marriage, I was able to kind of keep it at bay a little bit, but there was always this underlying anger and frustration and resentment that I at that time did not know where it came from.
So what about when you grow up, like when you're in the schools, did you like bully, like if you look, do you look like more thin?
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone would have.
Or do you try to be in the sports, try to hide yourself like that?
I remember my freshman year of high school making the decision to play freshman football, trying to be like a boy, trying to be a man.
Okay.
And I knew that's what it was also something the popular people do. And so it wasn't anything that I did because of myself. It was because of trying to distract myself or hide, actually both. And so I got really good at that. I got good at playing the game. I got really good at religion and staying busy. I realized different stages as I went through that, try not to be too competitive. And so all these layers began to peel off. And I was directing our team here in Los Angeles of about almost 30 people. And I started to basically go through what felt like a nervous breakdown. I was really busy raising support for our nonprofit. And it got to the point where I couldn't do much anymore. And so we went through a process of delegating all my tasks. And I took a sabbatical to raise my own support as well. And I went through about 3 to 4 months of not being able to get out of bed. And realizing for the first time what depression really was, even though I probably always had it. I really understood what it was. And went to a counselor that was defined to me as a life coach, which I felt good about that. But the first time that we saw each other, he called me a fraud and a fake. And that my wife is scared to death. And basically he was right. I was just a facade. I was just doing everything on the outside. Inner life was pretty much hollow, cardboard, and I didn't have much depth of the relationships. And so that began the process through counseling of, still in counseling over 15 years, but began to really look at myself and address myself. And probably about a year or so into therapy, I actually got the courage and maybe the conviction to tell my counselor, there's something here about my gender that I'm struggling with. And I was very scared to even present it. He actually kind of looked like Wolfman Jack from the old school Newsdays radio. And he was very gruff. He would get on his little ottoman and stand and yell at me, kind of mimicking my dad to kind of help me work through some of those things. And so it wasn't a touchy-feely counselor, but it worked, and it really helped me dig deeper and find out what was going on.
So recently we heard about a governor or some sort of government personnel criticized that we're not permanent. What do you think about that?
Yes, it's a shame that so much litigation is going through the states right
Mm-hmm.
now, especially states like Texas and Alabama and Idaho, um, where there's just such ignorance to what is really happening. And I can understand that perspective because for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of my life, that's what the perspective I took because
Yes.
I was fighting myself.
Yeah.
And so I can understand that, and coming from a evangelical background, I can understand that, but it's based so much in ignorance. And if they knew the reality, and if they
Mm-hmm.
knew what trans people really go through, if they knew that we are our own hardest enemy or our worst critic,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no one that's going to be more of a critic than I am to myself,
Yes.
but understanding that we have a lot of work to do. And as a
Yes.
community, we have
That's
a lot
right.
of coming together
Mm-hmm.
and to support and build into each other. Because if we don't do it, who will?
Yeah, that's very true. So let's kind of switch back to your personal story,
Yes.
your life.
Yeah,
So did you have kids or
I
children with
do. I
your?
have 2 children.
So how do they react to your
Yeah.
transitioning?
It kind of came down where in probably probably from 2016 to
Mm-hmm.
2019 was probably some of the most difficult times. I was really dealing with suicidal ideation.
Mm.
And I remember a September evening, a Saturday night, I was in bed with my wife, and I
Okay.
just said, I have to transition. I can't keep doing this. For the last
Mm-hmm.
probably 8 years prior to that, I was going to therapy to not transition. And
Yes.
because I would lose my wife, I would lose my family, I'd lose my
Mm-hmm.
ministry, my nonprofit career.
Right.
And I mean, she understood. She knew that she didn't want it, and she knew that she wouldn't be with me if I did,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that. But I couldn't. I couldn't just fake it anymore. I couldn't hold it in. I actually planned out my suicide, and
Oh
so it
my
scared me
gosh.
enough because I know my son has some tendencies with mental
Mm-hmm.
health like I do,
Yes.
and so I didn't want to kind of create any pathway for him either. So I stayed at home with my family from September 2019 through
Mm-hmm.
the end of the year.
Okay.
And then I moved to Long Beach,
Mm-hmm.
January of 2020, our
Okay.
fun year. And I actually started my HRT pills on the way to my apartment because I promised my wife I would do it after I left.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was January 5th, 1999 is when I started transitioning.
Yeah. So when you start taking the HRT, do you feel that you are aligned? Because when I start taking it, I actually feel very happy, like relieved
Oh my
in a
gosh,
way.
yes,
And
yes.
well, some people say there's a side effect with
Hmm.
emotional attack or some sort.
Right.
But I actually didn't feel that.
Yeah.
I feel like, oh, this is me, and I feel okay, and I'm more confident. Do you feel
Yes,
some sort of that
totally.
way too?
I remember hearing stories about how people felt kind of a peace and a
Mm-hmm.
wholeness, and
Yes.
so I really longed for that. I wanted for that because I was that time I was realizing I didn't have that, and so I knew that if I didn't have that, I probably wasn't trans enough. And even though
Yeah.
I don't think that, I wouldn't counsel anyone
Mm-hmm.
like that anymore. But um, within 3 days, I felt totally different. I had a peace, a calmness.
Yes.
I found myself whistling,
Mm-hmm.
just to myself. I'm like, what is this?
Singing.
And singing, yes, and just this new level of happiness that I never knew was possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that was affirmation within a couple of days of, man, this my body really wanted this. This is how I best operate.
Mm-hmm.
This aligns things that needed to be aligned. And
Right.
so, yeah, it's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey. I love the
Okay.
HRT
Yeah,
process.
awesome. So, right now we're gonna switch to with your transitioning
Mhm.
story, and then now you're owning your business,
Yeah.
and it's called Trans Owned. It's
Yes.
like a directory for
Correct.
trans people's business.
Correct.
Um, like, where's this idea come from? How do
Yeah.
you inspire to start
Right.
this business?
I was a social worker by trade. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
what I did in ministry, and then had a job at a health clinic downtown Los Angeles. And that's the job I took, leaving ministry, stepping out of ministry,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that at some point probably transition was in the process, and I would not be able to do that in ministry. Um, so I had the background of working with people, helping people, and part of that included some entrepreneur training that I've done in
Mm-hmm.
the past within our city. And it was amazing. We saw some great results, and it was very rewarding to do. And so I always knew I wanted to do my own. I was always entrepreneurial in that way.
Yes.
That came out a lot in our ministry and different programs we did.
Mm-hmm.
But the story is kind of silly, but I was looking for a trans t-shirt. And once I was out and I was trying to go through the process of reestablishing a wardrobe. And, I found a few trans shirts at that time, but I always wanted, who owns these shops? I really would like to buy something from a trans-owned place and to support our community and build it. I could, this may be some cis person, and that's fine. They can sell stuff, of course, but I really wanted to think that. So there has to be something out there that that lists different trans businesses, and I couldn't find anything. And I found kind of the best thing I found was our local LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, which had a listing of a lot of people from outside of the area, but nothing indicated if they're trans or not. They were just at least allies as part of the community.
Yeah, so your directory listing, is it national-wide or worldwide?
Yeah, it is national and global.
Okay.
Currently, I'm not sure there's anyone international. I'm talking to people internationally.
Okay.
I think we have one member right now that is international. So TransZone is an online business directory at transzone.co, and that is an access to any trans-owned or non-binary owned business that can get into the catalog. And so there will be one place that we can see all of our businesses, or at least most of our businesses.
If I want to join, how can I just go to that website?
Yes, transzone.co, and there's a tab called Join, very appropriately. And there's free memberships all the way to featured member, and you get different bells and whistles as a member. As I was building this out, I knew I wanted to be something more than just a directory. And that's when the entrepreneur training I had done in the past kind of came in. And so what we're doing is we're creating an adjacent online community. So all the paid members of the directory will be part of this community. And there'll be courses, workshops, different events, maybe like business insurance expert, real estate expert, talking to all of our business owners and make it available to help them grow in their understanding in their business. And so there'll be primarily business, but also personal development growth in this community. And the goal is for learning, but of also inspiration and collaboration, that we can work together.